Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Watertown Forward Second Charter Chat. My name is Emily Damon, and I'm the chair of the steering committee for Watertown Forward. Watertown Forward is a community initiative that seeks to expand the number of voices in the charter review process through a series of events designed to educate, empower, and engage residents. Our charter chats are an opportunity to share your views and ideas about the charter review process. And we hope through that events like this, community members can get connected with others interested in town government and become more informed about the charter review process. Additionally, we want to see empowered community members asking questions, raising concerns, and offering comments about the charter review. I wanted to begin by thanking everyone who attended the first charter chat 2 weeks ago, and also for all of your feedback. We have taken this feedback and incorporated it into this week's event. As a reminder, today's meeting is being recorded. So for those who are unable to attend, they can listen in later. Next, I'll pass it off to Larry, who will review the meeting guidelines and agenda. Larry?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Emily. Let's go on to the next slide. Hi, everyone. I'm Larry Raskin. Today, we're going to spend just a couple minutes on the process for today and meeting guidelines that'll help us have a productive time together this afternoon. The first major topic will be Councilor Tony Palumba with some input also from Councilor Lisa Feltner on the charter, how it relates to town government, and several related topics. We are then going to ask you for your vote in a poll on the top 3 most relevant topics for today's discussion. These were topics that were identified in the last charter chat a couple of weeks ago, and we wanted to get your take on the priorities, and then we'll have some further information and questions about those top three topics. From there, we'll move on to town government. We wanted to take this opportunity with everyone on the call to have a chance to identify what we all collectively believe is working well in town government and some things that perhaps aren't working so well. Those councilors who and other charter review committee members who may be on the call today will hear that discussion, and we'll get a chance to talk with among ourselves about what we believe is most important that the charter review committee ought to be paying attention to. That'll take a chunk of the time, and then we will end with ideas about further charter chats, and we're going to be asking you for your feedback about today's session. So with that, let's go on to, let me just share a little bit about meeting guidelines. There are going to be several opportunities for everyone on the call today to express yourself, to participate. It's always voluntary. It's up to you if that's something you'd like to do. The chat will be open for people to offer their questions and comments as we go along. We'll be monitoring that. If issues come up that we can address right away, we will do our best to do it. We'd invite you all to be curious, to come with questions and listen to what people are sharing, different points of view, and then follow up as appropriate. As Emily said, you'll be muted at the start, but then we'll open it up for your participation. There'll be a couple times where we'll be asking you to use the hand raise function. You'll find it in participants. You could put your hand up, then we'll know that's something you want to ask a question or offer a comment, and we'll do our best to get to everyone. Some things probably will be left undone, and we'll have to pick up on that and do that next time. We know that there may be some people joining on the phone. We understand that using the phone is a great way to connect, but it's also somewhat limited. So we unfortunately won't be able to get everybody fully connected if you're on the phone, but we will also be asking people for their comments on the phone, and you can also use the hand function on the phone as well. So that's that. Last time we went around and introduced ourselves in the interest of time. We're not going to do that today, but if you go to the participant list, you will see who is on the call today. And it looks like there's a good turnout with a good representation from the community. So thank you all for coming today. With that, I think it's time for us to go to the charter and related topics. And again, Councilor Palumba is going to take the lead on that and share some information about the charter, what it is, its relationship to town government, and the charter review process and timeline. And then we're going to get your thoughts about the topics for today with a poll. So Councilor Palumba, are you on with us right now?
I am. We're going to try to make this very short. I see who's on the Zoom. Thank everybody for attending. I'll try to keep this tight. As you know, the charter review process is something that happens every 10 years. We review our charter, or what is known as our Constitution, to go over it in detail, to see what people would consider necessary changes, to have a discussion about what might be changed, what might not be changed. It is a process that is done by a committee. At least the last 3 times we did this by a committee. And that committee is made up of the 9 town councilors and 6 members of the community chosen by Town Council President Sedaris. The purpose of them, as I mentioned, is to review the charter, to look at things that need to be changed, or consider new ideas that could be added to the charter. The process includes a series of meetings, and this Charter Review Committee, the CRC, this Charter Review Committee has met 4 times now. And each time we seem to be getting clearer about what our charge is and how to carry out that charge. We're being helped quite a bit through a contract that the town has with the Collins Center over at UMass, who are providing not only resources, information about other charters and other communities, information about comparatives of our community to other communities in terms of population and type of government, but also in generally helping us to shape the approach that we're going to be using. At the last meeting, it became clear that we were going to look at 4 areas and use those 4 areas to help talk about the charter, and to hope that out of the discussion of these 4 areas, which presently are focused around whether we should continue with our town manager, town council form of government, or move to our mayor/town council form of government. But the areas that we looked at were communication and transparency. And then we looked at responsiveness and accountability, and had some very good discussions amongst everybody about those 4 areas and what type of government might be better to make those things a reality. And then in the next meeting, I think we're going to go over in more detail a legislative capacity, the power between the legislature and the executive, and some discussion of vision. The importance of this, having these 4 areas to discuss, it gives us some framework to look at the charter. It doesn't require, we're not going to go paragraph by paragraph like we have in the past. We're going to look at these larger themes and be able to move around the charter from place to place. And finally, another positive thing that came out of the meeting was that the committee voted to establish its own outreach committee. And the outreach committee will be composed of 3 members of the citizen group and 1 member of the town council. And they will have the charge of finding ways to increase participation in the charter. And finally, we did do a sort of a little bit of a housekeeping task. We needed to vote to extend the charter because we passed the deadline of this year. We're not, obviously, we've only had 4 meetings. So the charter, we will continue to meet at least until June 2021, but we could also then vote again, well, submit to the town council asking that we can expand, continue the charter review process again. So I think that's a very short summary of the process and of what happened at the last meeting. I believe that you all received something from Watertown Forward that was prepared by, and I think it was attached to the quick reminder of today's meeting that was attached by Marcy it gave a nice summary of the last meeting and expanded on things that I said.
Okay, thank you, Tony. And if Councillor Feltner is on and wanted to add any comments, you'd be welcome to do that at this time. Okay, so why don't we continue now? And again, that meeting summary will be we're going to try to do that after each charter chat, have a written summary that will go out to everybody. So please have a look at that.
Hi,
So
sorry, Larry. I'll just say I'm here. I wasn't able to unmute myself. I
Oh.
had to read for you guys to do it. I'll just say that was an excellent summary by Tony and Marcy. Also, really great notes from the last meeting. So hopefully we'll just continue to get the word out and encourage participation.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Emily, I think we are ready for the poll. So let me just say what's going to happen here. You'll see 5 topics that people in Charter Chat number 1 a couple of weeks ago said would be important to get some more information about. So since we probably don't have time for all 5 today, we want to give you all an opportunity to vote on your top 3. And then we will go through, we'll turn it back to Lisa, to Tony and Lisa, and they'll respond to the top 2 or 3 that we have time for today. And the following ones we'll put them off to the next Charter Chat number 3. So we're just going to ask you to take a couple minutes quickly to rank order your top, just to choose your top 3 of the 5. And Emily, are we ready with the poll?
Yes.
Okay,
We'll
let's
see
do
it
it.
now.
So go ahead now, please, and pick your top 3 from those items and just let you read through them yourself. I think, Emily, we're done, right? Okay, it looks like there was a tie, if I got it right. Can we close the poll now on our screens? Yes. Okay. So it looks like, according to my notes, there was a tie. What items can be changed or added in the charter with some examples? And then the overview of Watertown's municipal government structure. And the next one was, how can the charter better reflect our town values around diversity, inclusivity, equity, human rights, etc. So why don't we start with number 2, what items can be changed or added in the charter with some examples? And we'll turn it back to Tony and Lisa for that.
Thank you. Well, you know, it's interesting. There's very limited, a few things that couldn't be addressed by the charter. Just about anything can be added or changed to the charter. But they wanted to look at some examples. And so when I thought about that, I figured, well, why don't I go back and look at the 2000 and, well, the big one, 2008, sorry, 1980, and then the 1990 and the 2001 and the 2011. So as you know, the big change that took place in 1980 is when we switched from a town meeting form of government to a town manager, town council form of government. That was the significant change. We didn't have a charter before, so basically the charter was being written when that happened. And that was the first charter following that vote by the residents. In 2009, I'm sorry, 1990, we had some changes. They weren't very significant, but they can be something as simple as this. And we appointed the town auditor was appointed by a majority vote of the council, which at one point was with an indefinite term. That was a change on who was appointing the town auditor and the term. At that point, in the 1990, it was the formerly appointed by the town council president for a 3-year term. So that changed. Also, on that particular, I'm not going to go through every change, but I just wanted to pick a few out. There was in the charter, there's a couple of sections that in regard to the periodic review of the charter. This change was, we moved from only having 4 community members to 6 additional members. This is also a change where all the gender neutral language took place. So every time you saw he, it went from he to she, or anytime you saw him, it went from him to her, and anytime you saw his, it went from his or hers. There was also a change, an annual job performance of the town manager. This was an addition by the town council that was added in 1990. This did not go, these changes went directly to the voters after they went to the Attorney General to see if they were all right or didn't violate any state laws, excuse me. And they were voted by the residents. In 2000, year 2000, a significant number of changes, almost 3 pages of changes were made in that charter. And they were voted on by the voters in November of 2001. There was some advanced changes in the role of the town council president. There was some changes in how to fill vacancies at the town council for the councilors, both at large and district. There's some places where the role of the council was increased. There were more responsibilities added to the town manager's list of responsibilities. There was filling vacancies on the school committee and the library trustees were changed. There are some budget process changes that took place. There was some whole section on penalties around felon, what would happen if someone was convicted of a felon. And these all came to the voters after they were submitted to the governor and the legislature. This is what is called a special act or a home rule petition change. And they were eventually voted by the voters and approved by the the governor and the state legislature. And then in 2010, which was just 10 years ago, not a lot of changes in 2010. There wasn't just that the town council clerk, which formerly was appointed by that's our clerk, the town council's clerk, was now to be appointed by the town council. The auditor was now to be supervised by the town council president. They removed the requirement of the town manager to have a quarterly written report to the town council. They consolidated all the conflict of interest statements so that it'd be one place in the charter. They changed the charter review. It's an interesting change on the charter review. They added the word complete, that there would be a complete review of the charter. At this point, it just says review the charter. But more interesting, they changed it from person to voters, that the 6 people who would be appointed by the town council president were not to be persons, but to be voters. There is a requirement that all our ordinances be annually reviewed. There is also an extension of our criminal justice, of the criminal jurisdiction, again, having to do with what things you could be removed from the town council for. And then they cleaned up some language around commissions that we never had. You know, we had a physician on staff, and we don't have a physician on staff and that. The interesting thing about this is that you would wonder why this was not a special act like the one that was in 2000. I'm sorry, I got 2000 on my line. In the year 2000, because there does seem to be a change in elections, but this was not a special act. This was basically put in front of the voters after it was reviewed by the Attorney General, and it was voted on. And the reason I say, because the reason I was a little confused about this, because there was some change in vacancies. which was one of the reasons why the earlier charter that won 10 years ago had to be brought to the town, to the state legislature and to the governor. Now, maybe these changes weren't considered as not important, but as drastic. So this was not a charter review petition. This was a straightforward, let the residents look at what the changes were made. It didn't have to go to anybody, but it did have to go to the town council. I'm sorry, didn't have to go to our state legislature, but it had to go to the town council. So that gives you a flavor of what you can change. I just want to say that there's more that can be done. We could change the type of governance right now if we wanted to in this charter review commission. But that would mean that we'd have to follow certain procedures. If we didn't do anything that broad, that significant, we didn't change term limits, we didn't do that, then we could do this more in-house and would not have to go outside to the state legislature. I don't know if that helps, but does that give you a sense?
Yeah, thank you for that, Tony. Let's, Lisa, is there anything you'd want to add to that question about what items can be changed or added in the charter?
I would just say there's been a lot of questions about process and let people know that the process for review of the charter could be included in more detail in the charter itself as well. But otherwise, I think those are good examples, and I'm sure people have questions just on that.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the way we're going to do this. Let me say two things. One is that Tony and Lisa are answering these questions because they're town councilors. They're on the charter review committee as members of the town council. They're also members of Watertown Forward. So that's why you're seeing them here today as opposed to some other people, because they've been working with us on this right along. What we also want to do now is go to the other two questions, get some input about them, and then we're going to open it up for any questions you have about anything that you heard in the last 15 minutes or so from in answer to these questions. So just to keep it moving, we're going to go to the next question now, which is an overview of Watertown's municipal government structure, which probably could be a semester-long civics class, but we're going to try to get some response back from Tony and then Lisa to the question of the overview of Watertown's municipal government structure. So back to you.
Well, this could be done in 4 or 5 hours. So let me see if we can do it in 5 minutes. Our town has a governance structure that has a very strong town manager form of government with a town council. The town council, let me do them first because it's a little easier to explain. The town council is the legislative body of the council of the town. It makes rules, orders, resolutions. That's its responsibility. It also has a major responsibility in that it passes the annual budget. That is a key responsibility for the town council. That's primarily it for the town council. There's budget priority, there's major budget, reviewing the budget and approving the budget, and making any laws, rules, ordinances for the town. Now the executive arm is the town manager. Now the town manager, let me just give you these comparisons. The town council can is responsible for appointing 2 positions. I'm sorry, 3 positions. The town manager, the town auditor, and our own town council clerk. That's the clerk of the town council, right? Otherwise, the town manager has responsibility as the executive to maintain the daily operations of the town. He or she is responsible for the hiring, firing, and supervision of all town employees, all department heads, from the police department down to the Department of Public Works. He or she is responsible for preparing a budget, an annual budget, and that is presented to the town council. If you were to look at the charter, our present charter, you would see 13 responsibilities listed under the role of the town council, 13 specific responsibilities that council has, that the town manager has. You would see maybe 1 or 2 under the town council. Now, it is a fairly heavy, favored, strong town manager type of government. Now, what are some other pieces of our government? Well, the other pieces of our government are obviously all the departments. We have the major departments that most municipalities have: public works, fire, police. We have public conservation, the committee on there's human service, health department, excuse me. We have obviously a school district, which is separate from the town council, and the school district has its own elected members. The school committee is a separate body that has its own elected members. Oh, I jumped right over one of the basics of the town council. The town council is made up of 9 people. 4 of those are at large. 4 of those are at large, and 4 of those are district. We have 4 districts in town. The 9th person is the town council president. The town council president is elected, like the rest of us, by the people. He is also considered an at-large. So you could say that we have 5 at-large members, including the town council president, and 4 district councilors. As I said, we have the major departments that most communities have, and now the heads of those departments are appointed by the town manager. We also have a series of commissions and committees. We have a planning board, a zoning board. We have a bicycle and pedestrian committee. We have a environment and energy efficiency committee. We have a number of other committees that have been created by ordinance. These are all volunteer committees. All the people on those committees are selected by the town manager, but have to be approved by the town council. They all have terms. They all have to abide by the open meeting law, but they play a pretty important role. I mean, if you think of government, they're important players in government. They often are in the process responsible for advising a particular department. One of the departments I failed to mention, which is very influential. To me, there are like 5 key departments: police, fire, public works, community planning and development, and police, fire, public works, community planning and development. Those 4 are big departments. And of course, you have your school department. I'm trying to stay a little bit away from that. The school department, which has the largest number of employees, and that school committee hires and fires the superintendent. So I give you a kind of a broad picture. Should we stop there?
Okay, thank you for that. That's a good overview of town government. Lisa, comments you'd want to add to what Tony said?
I guess I would just say that, a list of the standing committees are online under town council. But in general, so people know that the members of committees, and boards, are all appointed by the town manager with, they come to interview and to the relevant committee of the town council, and then the council votes to appoint them. So we are grateful for all our volunteers. As Tony pointed out, everybody's a volunteer and subject to open meeting law. But in terms of, things you could, those are potential things you could change as powers of appointment, and that process. But as Tony also said, the town council can form a committee by ordinance as well. So, but I think that's a lot of information to absorb.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thanks very much for that.
One thing real quick, because people ask about this all the time, and I'm sorry I didn't do this in order. the town council, the 9 of us, sit on 11 committees. So there are a series of subcommittees that the town council has. Each councilor sits on at least 2 or 3. There's a president, a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. Those committees are very important because that's where much of the work gets done. And that's where many of the town departments work with those committees to advance certain pieces of legislation. But eventually all legislation needs to be approved by the full town council.
Thank you for that. Also, just want to point out that some people have been asking some questions in the chat. And also some people who are here today have been answering those questions in the chat while we're listening to these responses. So thank you for those of you who are in town government or have some perspectives and are answering people's questions in the chat. And you'll have a chance at the end of the day today also to say some things came up today that you'd like to go deeper in. We don't have time for it today, but you'll be able to tee those things up so we can perhaps make them as important content in future charter chats. So with that, let's go to the third question, which is how can the charter better reflect our town values around diversity, inclusivity, equity, human rights, etc.? An important question. And Tony, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think that anything can be added to a charter. Again, let me be real clear. We didn't go through the 3 ways the charter can be changed, but let me be clear that if this committee, the present CRC, decided that they wanted to institute a new department or a new committee into the town that looked at equity and human rights and inclusivity of diversity, they could do that. They could present that as a discussion point for the committee. The committee then would vote on it if they have to shape it, but then vote on it. And the other thing to remember, though, about the process that we're using here, and even if we use the other related process, it all has to go through the town council. So if they had, this committee comes up with a series of suggested changes that directly affect diversity or equity or inclusiveness, whether it is a department or a regulation or a rule that an existing department has to abide by. For example, what you could say that the personnel department has to, on a yearly basis, do an evaluation of its hiring processes to see if it has increased the number of people of color in its town departments, right? That's not starting a new department, but it's saying something that you could do. Whatever this committee comes up with needs to be sent to the town council for approval. And in this case, it would be, I believe, if we use the process that I'm talking about right now, I think it's a pure majority, not a 2/3. So just keep that in mind. You have 9 members on the committee already. So those 9 members then switch hats and become town councilors and vote on it. But you could add things to existing departments that they might have to do. You could create a new department that has to do certain things. Those are all possible ways. This is really an open up one. I'm going to stop there. I'm sure other people have ideas.
Thank you, Tony. Lisa, anything you'd want to add to that question about the charter better reflecting town values?
No, just to Tony's point, what I think a lot of people don't realize is this is Charter Review Commission, a review committee, not a commission. So we're not starting from scratch, but almost anything can be changed. But the committee, Charter Review Committee, which is very, very large because it's all 9 councilors plus 6 citizens, the town council has the final say, and you're going to need 5 votes for those. And then depending on the changes, you'd also have to, have the people approve it at the ballot box.
Okay, thank you for that. So with this very helpful response to these 3 questions, let's open this up for a few minutes. People may have a question. You have some curiosity about something you heard. You'd like to offer an idea, a comment. We probably don't want to be in this time debating the elements of the charter. But this is a time for us to hear from everyone if you do have questions. And I see some hands up. And just after you've had a chance to speak, I'd ask you to lower your hand. I see Tiffany Rose York. Tiffany, you'll have to, I think you can unmute yourself and then ask your question.
Hey, Larry, long time no see.
Hi.
How are y'all? I'm Tiffany. I live on Riverside Street next to, or across the street from Nancy. So first meeting, but I've been fairly vocal in the charter reviews for the past 2 or 3, as well as what's happening within the school in terms of the racism. And so I'm trying to do a lot of connecting of the dots recently, but specifically for here, I guess, does anyone know and this was brought up actually, a question by somebody else, why they did not form the Human Rights Commission 10 years ago? Is there any context that would help me then further my understanding of how to get that going, whether it's in the charter, if someone will say how else that can be done ASAP?
Okay. Thanks for that question. One of you want to take that one on about Human Rights Commission?
I'd be happy just to say my opinion. I wasn't on the council then, but I do remember the discussion. I do remember the vote. The majority of councilors didn't believe we needed it, that they didn't think there was a problem, and that there was not necessary for a Human Rights Commission. I don't think it was that complicated, but I know there are other people, maybe some on this committee, on this chat, who helped craft it, and maybe they can speak more directly to it.
Yeah, I wasn't on the council either then, but that's basically my memory. I don't know if John Gannon, it looks like he's on the chat and his hand is raised, if he had experience with that or wants to speak to it or not.
Okay, John, were you around and would you like to respond to that, or did you have a different question?
Well, I did have a different question, but
You want to respond to that because I think Ernesta had her hand up before you. So if you had a perspective on this one, go ahead.
Louise Enoch has a presentation she did and could fill people in. So maybe could defer to Louise.
Yeah, I was going to say Louise might have something to say about this.
Go ahead, Louise.
I don't have to say it right now, but I'd be happy to talk to Tiffany, and I have a lot of the materials that the original group put together.
Okay.
And a video actually of the town council meeting where it was presented. So
Great. Thank you so
Right.
much, Louise.
I'll just offer one comment, then we'll move to somewhere else because I was involved in that at that time. Yes, the town council didn't feel like it was necessary, and there was some people did and some people didn't carry the day. And it led to actually the town, some of us forming World in Watertown. We said, we'll do something on our own if the town isn't going to sponsor it. So that was one response to that. Let's go over to Ernesta. Ernesta, I believe you have a question.
Yes, actually it's her husband, Mark.
Okay, go ahead, Mark.
So the big elephant in the room, of course, is the school committee, which takes up half of Watertown's budget. And can the Charter Review Commission look at the structure of the school committee, the relationship of the school committee, and its governance to the town council, and its relationship to the town government as a whole? Or is the school committee off limits?
Thanks for that question. Somebody want to take that one? Go ahead, Tony.
I'll do it as best I can on this one. Let me say, I believe that the charter could look at the terms and the number and the terms of school committee members. That school committee's structure is really, or its rules, its powers are set up by state government. And so that it's very hard to change any of that. They are considered an independent body and they have to abide by state law. Well, so does the town council. But I'm just saying it's a different setup. Though I do believe that we can, and it has been changed in the charter in terms of vacancies and so forth, that we can address issues of terms and issues of composition. Thank you, composition.
what about issues of budget overview?
The budget goes directly from them to the town manager, who then presents it as part of the budget that we see as a council. So yeah, that is a process that's already in place. Not saying, I assume that could be changed, just like you could change the process that the town manager submits the budget to us. You could change the date that if it's in the charter. So yes, that could be changed, but there is already a relationship where the school committee reviews its budget. The superintendent submits it to the school committee submits it to the town manager. And the town manager puts it into his overall budget, which he submits to town council.
Okay, thank you for that response and for that question. John, it looked like you have a hand raised, so do you want to go ahead with your question or comment?
Well, sure. And not only am I just a first term town councilor, but my day job for the last 25 to 30 years has been as town council and attorney for numerous cities and towns in Massachusetts. So I've been involved in at least a dozen charter reviews for various of my client towns. And I just want to emphasize, nothing is the limit here. I mean, there are certain state requirements, but the limits are your imagination. And we could always figure out a way to impose something. That's for the lawyers to discuss, but it's a very creative process. And the way I look at the charter, not a static document like some people might view it. Not, I'm not a original constructionist, type of person with regard to the town charter. They're meant to be changed and evolve and make more vibrant as the times change. So with that, I did have, just want to emphasize, anything can be discussed. I've got a few tweaks that I can share. It's just one member's opinion.
Well, rather than getting into the content right now, John, I wanted to ask you a follow-up question if I could. One of the other question that got some votes was, outside of a charter review year, how can the charter be changed? It sounds like you've had a lot of experience across Massachusetts or in some other places. I wonder if you could offer some perspective on that, and maybe Tony and Lisa could as well.
Absolutely. So charter can be changed anytime anyone has a wonderful idea, it gets the majority support of council. I see Steve Owens is on the participant list. Simply requires, there he is in a salute. So simply requires special legislation. Generally, it is required that it go to the ballot box to become official, but the process would be the town council votes on this great idea. It's submitted to the state legislature, and either before it gets passed by the state legislature or afterward, it has to go to the ballot box. So there's always flexibility to change the process. Just requires getting 5 of the 9 votes as a majority. So
okay, great. Thank you for that. A good perspective. Tony, Lisa, anything you'd want to add to what John said about the changes to the charter?
I'll let Lisa go first.
Sorry, slow to unmute there. No, I would just say, there are things you could change in the school committee, but Tony's correct as far as general laws, setting the salaries of employees. The school committee is directly involved in collective bargaining, which the town council is not. That's town manager's role for town employees. But for instance, the town council president currently also sits on the school committee. That's a lot of the president, town council president currently has a lot of power in the council, and then a lot of added responsibility with school committee too, depending on how active and what else going in town. Good things, having that synergy. Is that something we want to keep? Is that too unrealistic to expect if we're going to keep this form in the next president? I know other cities or towns, the town council will elect the council president. So instead of that position being voted by itself, maybe there's some turnover and different counselors grow in their different roles and you don't have one person in a position, good or bad, at longevity, experience, but maybe, staying in position too long, there's pitfalls with that too. So that's just another example of creative thinking, if you will, that John was mentioning.
Okay, thank you for that. We have time for one or two more questions or comments this time, and I see Jackie's hand is up. So Jackie, do you want to go ahead with what you want to say?
Thank you. I just had question sort of about process, but I feel like the town councilors sort of have a unique window, and so do we as just residents about, what our values are. But also, I'm a little confused about what power the town council has to hold the town manager accountable and where there are limits to that. And as town councilors who hear their constituents' concerns, they might have a window into something that would benefit residents that we're not aware of in that relationship or that accountability between town council and town manager, because we can hold our town councilors accountable for how they're advocating for our concerns with the town manager if they have the power to do that. So that's that. And then I have another really quick question I feel like it's important for me to know where the different town councilors stand on things, because we do vote for them. And so, we would have more information about whether they're consistent with our values. But I feel like there's limits to what they can share and I'm confused about those. There's like whatever the public meeting laws and different things like that. So that could be clarified, because I would hate to put someone in a position like, what do you think of this, when they're not allowed to tell us? But then again, we need to know if we're going to hold them accountable. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. So we've got we got a couple minutes left. So Lisa, Tony, you want to respond to Jackie's concerns, questions?
On the first part, the last part, you should be able to talk to any counselor about what they feel on a particular issue. I mean, that's their responsibility, is to be answering to the voters. If there's a situation that comes up in the council meeting, in the town charter committee, that we're discussing in detail, a very particular proposal that's being discussed, then I would not be able to discuss that in this forum. But at this point, everything is very general, and there's no specific things being discussed. Your first question, which was the first question about?
Was that about power regarding the town manager, Jackie?
Oh, yeah. The town council is responsible for hiring and firing and supervising the town manager. And also for conducting an annual evaluation of the town manager. I will be very honest that the evaluation doesn't come as often as we'd like to, as it should. That's due to a number of factors. His salary and his benefits are reviewed every time there is an evaluation. The reason I think that our town manager has been here over 30 years, or almost 30 years as a town manager, has a lot to do with some of the feelings of certain counselors that he has done a wonderful job financially, and therefore it should continue. But that is our responsibility. That is our responsibility to evaluate, to bargain with, and to either hire or to let go, and to hire the town manager.
Thank you, Tony. In the interest of time, we'll take one more. There's one more person who has a hand up, so we'll take that one question. It looks like Joseph, if I've got that right, if you would ask your question or make your comment.
Yeah, it's Joe Lewandowski here. And I want to ask if there's going to be a discussion of whether or not we should actually change the form of the government, or are we just talking about tinkering around the edges? Because I think that
Yep. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
strong manager government, you know, in my view, has been very frustrating and unaccountable. And I think that it discourages a lot of people from participating in municipal affairs. You know, I think that people don't feel that it's responsive and feel like their participation is for naught.
Great.
You know,
Hang on to that, Joseph, because in the next section, you're going to have a chance to weigh in on what you think is working well and not so well. It sounds like that's an important one for you. So let's take a couple of quick comments about if that's on the table for discussion. Tony, Lisa.
Oh, you want to? I thought you were going to do it later.
But no,
yes.
not the content of it. Just the fact, is that a topic that is?
Yes, that is a topic that's definitely being discussed. The framework we used at the last meeting, clearly we are reviewing things in context of that decision. Though other things will come out of that discussion, we are definitely looking at things in that context, and we'll make some decision in January.
Very good. Lisa, anything you'd want to add to that?
Yes, that was a topic of we just started that, to Joe's question, at the last committee meeting. And so we're going to continue that. Just to add on to the question about town manager and accountability, because I see a lot of questions in the chat still about that. And that's to say, there's a good question there. Does town council really have enough information to adequately evaluate the position of the town manager? That's a good question. And even the job description of the town manager, as well as how we evaluate, could be looked at. Well, but if you have a mayor, then the people evaluate, technically by the ballot box. So I'll just throw that out there as point of reference.
Great, thank you for that. Okay, so a good discussion, important issues. And we want to segue to the next one, which actually Joseph's question is a good lead into it. This topic, yes.
Before we move on, I just wanted to reference, Emily's going to link in the chat. Tony had done a really nice job answering a bunch of questions from our last charter chat. So anything that we didn't cover today that was brought up at the last chat, and I think there's some overlap with some of today's questions, will be in this document. That was a collaborative effort with some answers.
Thank you, Janice. Good to have that available for everyone. So in the next section, we're going to be asking you two questions, one at a time, and we're going to ask you to put your answer in the chat, and then we're going to review the chat and look at it and see what some of the themes are and report that back. And to the extent we have some time at the end, we'll open it up for some comments. So the first question is, thinking about town government, what is working well? And then the next question, which we'll get to in a few minutes, is what's working less well. And we're asking you to think about things like, examples, some of which you've already heard, the review processes for town departments, the communication between town government and residents in Watertown, how the budget gets allocated, the balance of power between the elected representatives and town administration, any of the things that you've heard today or that you've been thinking about. We'd ask you to identify just one or maybe two aspects of town government that you think are working well. And if you type those into the chat, then we're going to scan those and we'll all have a chance to see what you have to say. And Janice is going to respond back with some themes. Okay, so why don't you go ahead and take the next minute or so, everybody, to put something in the chat and answer to the question, what is something that is working well in town government in Watertown? And if you're on the phone, we'll have a chance to get your comments afterwards when we open it up. Yeah, everybody can read what's in the chat, and Janice, you had a chance to look them over. Do you want to share some
Yeah, and for anyone who's on the phone who may not be able to see, just kind of good to sum up. It looks like our #1 vote is for our library services, and I'm going to go ahead and echo that sentiment. We miss them dearly, even though we can access them now in more limited capacity. So our library services, as well as Parks and Rec. So, you know, our Greenway expansion, the way that the streets and parks are maintained was another theme that people seemed to think was working well. About the structure, so the democratic process is still intact, which someone mentioned was favorable. Some of the counselors seem very accessible and very open to direct communication, and the general level of professionalism across the board. There's more comments coming in as I'm summarizing, so if I don't get every single one, I apologize. And then it looks like someone mentioned that there's some frugality with the budget, which was good, and the subcommittee structure. And also just I have a better understanding now actually of how overloaded the town councilors are and how wonderful of a job they do, as some of them being part-time, just managing you know, everything that's under their umbrella of responsibility. We appreciate you, counselors, if any of you are on here. Library, rec department, farmers market, that's really great. I think it's Live Well Watertown and the farmers market collaboration has just been such a wonderful addition to the town. I will also echo that. And more accessibility. We have more work to do there, but it's good to see that we realize that there's more need there. So I think that's kind of a general summary.
Yeah, thank you, Janice. And for those of you who you know, want to just kind of scan that, you can have a look at what's there. We want to now ask you to shift your attention to the other side of the coin, which is one, maybe two things that you think when you think about town government really isn't working as well as you wish it were. And again, we'll do it the same way. Type your comments into the chat in answer to that question. One thing about town government that's working less well, and we'll then summarize afterwards. So let's have a little background music, Emily, and we'll take a couple minutes for this.
30 seconds ago, so I have not participated in anything, but I understand because I'm on the phone. So you know what? I don't want to take up time, so I'm going to send what I want to say because I hope it has some meaning after almost 30 years on the town council. I am the only one that's participating that was on the legislative body when we were a town and on the legislative body when we were a city. So I hope that I can offer something. So I think I'll do it in writing. I love what you're doing. I support you 100%. I'm sorry I was muted through the whole thing, but maybe you're better off.
Okay.
But I will send it to you, and I hope that you can pass it on to everyone who has, participated, because I think there's a lot of things that you don't know that I would love to offer.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you for doing that, Marilyn. And when we
open, give me a Gmail address. I don't have.
All right, I'll follow up with you. I'll send you my email address afterwards today.
All right,
back to us.
Thank you, and thank you all for all this. I
love
this.
Hang in there on the phone. We're glad to have you with us today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I don't mind being muted. I heard everything and it was wonderful. Okay.
All right.
Or just give me the address and I'll be in touch.
All right,
I'll
send it to you. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So why don't we now hear from Janice with some summary comments, and then we have a few minutes afterwards where we can open it up for people who would want to ask a question or make a comment. So Janice, over to you.
So a lot of these themes have been brought up at CRC meetings and previous chats. And the number one really being a lack of diversity in the town and the school committee. Can you hear me, Louise? Or were you talking to someone else? You're okay. Okay. I want to make sure everyone can hear me. And so, and then broadly, accountability and transparency is something we hear quite often. Just having, more accountability, better communication across the board. And police accountability as well was specifically brought up a few times. Let's see, power structure of the town manager. This is a really big one for people. And just a general, and I thought this was really interesting that this came up because it just occurred to me that this is something I'm unclear on is the town values and vision. Sort of what does the town value? What are our convictions? What do we have for a vision? And where is that information so people can learn more about that, get involved in certain ways. So that's really important. And then there's some, I guess there's a little bit of the rec department and roadways. There are some people that actually think there's room for improvement there as well as it's working well. So there's both on both sides. So there was a lot of comments, but those were sort of some broad themes. So yeah.
Okay, thank you, Janice. Let's now open it up because you may have some questions or comments. We have just a couple minutes left, so we'll have to keep this kind of short, but wanted to afford people an opportunity to weigh in on something that you heard either on the plus list or the could be better list. So again, use the chat, use the in participants, use the raised hand, and we'll call on you. Anybody have anything they want to offer?
Looks like Bill is raising his hand.
Oh, there is one. Tiffany, go ahead.
Okay, Bill, did you want to go? You were waving before I raised my hand.
Was.
Go ahead, hun.
This is quick. Larry, thank you. You've done a magnificent job of facilitating this, and I really, really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for that, but appreciate the comment, and let's get on to
all right, let's move on.
An answer to the question. So Tiffany, go ahead.
Oh, that was all he was going to say, Bill. I wouldn't have given up my
that was
time.
it.
No, I'm kidding. I think what I'm struggling with is the weighing the balance of, I think how Janice summarized that was really great. Giving time to a vision and a core value and a core equity purpose and statement that Watertown counselors, citizens, whoever would come up with that, but also weighing that if we are going to do that, would it take away from the time that we need to do this, the charter review and then ask for extensions? And are we then really just perpetuating what is already in place and not making those absolute tangible changes we would definitely need to make because they've had some disparate and harmful impact on the town, as well as they aren't allowing for accountability. So it's kind of like, I love this and I need this. So I'm wondering like how that works in town government.
Okay. Is there a quick comment from Tony and or Lisa to that? Or is that just something we'll just leave hanging there?
There's a quick comment. There's a quick comment. I think, we haven't reached the point where citizens have written or made concrete suggestions to be put in front of the committee. So if someone felt like they could create a value statement that touched on the most important things about what Watertown stands for and what Watertown residents feel is important, that could be presented to the council, to the committee, keep saying council, to the committee for discussion. That doesn't have, and it doesn't have to take up any more time than any other issue. It could be seen as equal to other issues.
Okay, I know that some charters, some constitutions have preambles, which are statements of their values and what's important. And it sounds like that could be.
We currently do not, Larry?
No, I don't believe we do.
We don't. Okay, thank
you. But I think it's an option is what I'm hearing.
Okay.
So why don't we, with this now, I don't see other hands up right now. So
Larry, sorry.
Was there, Lisa, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I just want to comment on that too, that one of the things I learned as a counselor is, you get all the votes behind you, you come in, you're really excited, and you have these things you want to get done. But Watertown operates on a somewhat reactive basis, and as much as people kind of assume that voted for me, I need you to take the lead. As a counselor, I could say I've been treated as a single voice instead of really representing my district. So you need to you need to have those voices activate the public to come and get those 5 votes at the council, or get official business submitted to a committee, and even when the official, if somebody's chair of a committee, generally you would think, well, you could just set an agenda because I'm chair of this committee and we're going to meet on this. But all business is voted on, but procedurally, and it's good, then everybody's aware of what's going on. But the full council votes on each, we call it a referral or new business that goes to committee. So, part of it is understanding the process and kind of how the town likes to work, and then how you can get the public to, I can't do this job without you, and work together to slowly, or maybe quickly, but get those changes that we can do to move forward and be a little more progressive, if you will.
Thank you for that. Finding a way for people to have a voice and channeling that in the right way sounds like an important part of it. So we're going to be wrapping up now in the next couple minutes. Let's see. Emily has a poll which she's going to put up, which is going to give you a chance to give us some feedback about how this went today. So if you could put that up. And Emily, we'll just see if there's a, okay, so we've got two things now. One is to rate today, the charter chat from either excellent to poor. And the other thing we'd like from you is if you wouldn't mind putting in the chat something that you would think would be helpful for the next charter chat number 3, which would be 2 weeks from now. So if you could do two things, the poll, and send us a comment about some topics or something you think would be especially useful and helpful the next time we all get together. And then we'll just close it up after that. So I get to see we get some real feedback, real time, and everybody gets to see it. So we're being transparent and we're doing public engagement.
Larry. I did have one quick question though. Lisa had brought up they all have to vote on every new business. Is that an item that can be changed through the charter, or no, Lisa, or Councilor Palumbo or John? I'm just trying to get a sense of what can be changed.
Process. Some things are in our town council rules, and so the council, we update our rules at every term, although we're behind because of the pandemic for this term. But those rules are also online, and always open to taking feedback on rules you think maybe we should have or change.
Okay, thank you. And it looks like since we're just in the ending time, there's another hand that went up from Vinny. So if you wanted to weigh in on something, go ahead as we wrap up.
Oh, great. Thank you, Larry. Good job here. Good discussion. So I was going to actually answer that question that was just asked. The way the democratic process works is that it's a majority vote to make decisions. So that Lisa answered that question, but that is really sort of a fundamental of how government works, is that to move forward we need a majority vote. I just do want to, one last thing is there's a lot of things, and I think Tony touched on this in some of his comments. The charter is really more of a high-level organizational structure thing. The vast majority of what we do is done by ordinance, it's done by resolution, it's done by just simple motion. There's so much that is done in government that is not in the charter. And the idea that we have to wait every 10 years to do some of these things, and if we miss our opportunity now, we're gonna have to wait another 10 years, is really not true. And if you look at what we've done in the past, we've done an amazing amount of stuff through the council. And we can continue to do that. So don't, many of the issues that were brought up here, we could have addressed last year, we could address next year, we could address this year, we could address next week, so I don't want people to feel discouraged about stuff. I just want to think about the many things that we can do and we have done without actually having to write it into the charter. So.
Okay. Great, thank you. So government goes on all the time.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Well, so thank you everybody for the poll results. It looks like we're doing okay, and we'll take your input in the chat for other topics or things that we could do better. I'd like to turn it back to Emily now so we can she can say a few final comments, wrap up, and what's next.
Can I have one last,
Of
Emily?
course.
Can squeeze in. I just want to, one of the things that we talked about is how the charter changes, just want to reference, I'm not sure where we put them. I think they're going to go into the chat, the links. We created 3 documents that show how the charter could be changed. And we could talk about those at another time, but they're very important documents because they help you understand what can be done when, and we can do a lot. But if you would put those in it, they'll go directly to our to where they are for your review. And then I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tony. Emily, you want to close it up for today?
Sure, sounds good. And I did put those 3 documents in the chat. If you just double click on them, you can then access them that way. Okay. Well, thank you all so much for joining us for our second charter chat. We hope you can join us again in a few weeks. The next charter chat will be on Sunday, December 20th. And we also encourage you to attend the next Charter Review Committee meeting, which will be on Tuesday, December 15th at 6 p.m. If you have any questions or want to provide us even more feedback from today's event, thank you again for putting those in the chat, but you can always email us at forwardwatertown@gmail.com. And you can also email us to subscribe to our mailing list. So thank you again for coming today, and we hope to see you at the next one.